Hi there, my name is Karlos Bernart. For the past 16 years, I've helped create, map, and curate over 2,500 miles of off-road bicycle routes in the state of Florida to help transport riders from the edge of Alabama, the edge of Georgia, to the Keys, all using as much dirt road and off-road corridors as possible.
Straightforward. It is 17 miles to Renegades on the River. They are expecting us. I told them there was going to be, when she asked me how many, I said a shitload. Shitload of us, ma'am. Day 2 is when you'll see some new stuff. There's a little bit of shenanigans to connect to State Road 17, but we actually don't ride on State.
The whole process of wanting to get to a point with SingleTrack Samurai where it becomes my sole focus was to provide folks some kind of little memento or little reward for their achievements of just essentially the patches are just a reward for showing up and making it healthy. It's really not a matter of you finishing the route. Here you go, my friend. Oh, thank you. Thanks for coming.
Cool patch.
It's all right. It's an all right patch.
No, it's a cool patch this year. I like it.
And one of the kind of side effects of wanting to advertise my events better and create these mementos was I kind of accidentally started designing stuff. When it comes to my patches, I design most of the patches. In the past, I've had to kind of commission local artists to help create, make my vision come to life. And then I had some people teach me how to use certain programs online, and I started, creating patches. So most of the time, almost all the patch concepts are directly from me. There's been 1 or 2 times where I've actually just told a local artist like, hey, the theme for this year is bears for like Tally Tango, because there's a lot of bears on a segment of the route. There's a big joke about bears falling out of the trees. There's so many of them, they call them tree bears. And since the theme was bears, I enlisted this local artist that I know from that area who I've spoken to before via email, and he straight up created a patch. I kind of just told him what the theme was. And then there's been a couple of other times I've enlisted people like Brianna Goral to help me with some Huracan designs. And that's, it's turned into a thing. Now I design most of the banners, all the flyers, a lot of the stickers, a lot of the pins. It's kind of fun. It's something I started doing just as a necessity, and I don't know, I think my route creating is better than my patch making, but they're a lot of fun. It's fun. Like when I did the COVID patch, it was a square patch, but I made it into a parallelogram because, COVID, it made everything a little wonky. So it's a lot of the times if you pull me to the side and ask me, hey, what's the deal with the patch? I'll tell you a little story behind it, like the Forgotten Florida patch with the flamingo riding a bicycle. It was just like, I don't know. I think there's a flamingo in that Forgotten Coast that hangs out at St. Mark's, and that's who I kind of recruited as the mascot for the Forgotten Florida. So it's just little things like that. There's always some kind of story behind each patch or a theme. Before I even got into cycling, I used to go to UCF, and that required me driving down State Road 415 to State Road 46 to State Road 426. And I'd take that route every day, and often I would see this older gentleman on like a classic, in what they call like an English style bike, just kind of cruising around. And I noticed everywhere I went, I would see this person. And what I later learned was that person was named Herb Hiller. He's a local DeLand resident, and he's also the person who conceptualized connecting the bike paths in the West Volusia region with segments that were already created in the Daytona area. And then he studied up on the natural corridors that were slated to be created as bike paths, like the East Coast Regional Rail Trail and segments of the Spring to Spring Trail. And he envisioned this loop of bike paths that they call the River to Sea Loop. Unfortunately, it takes time for the bureaucratic wheels to get moving and for these bike paths to be built. So as I got into wanting to prepare and create routes, I decided to ride the River to Sea Loop, but use the corridors in their natural state. So we would still ride that rail bed that hadn't been made into a bike path yet. We would ride it as it was. And that's when I came up with my version of the river to sea loop. It was inspired by Herb Hiller.
Was not me this time. No, it was not me.
The whole leading group tours thing came from wanting to do the river to sea loop and getting people to do it with me. There's probably like 6 miles of sand between here and camp.
There's only 4 miles to camp though.
I thought it was a mile to camp.
It is. It's 1.2 something miles.
So it's 6 miles of sand, 1 mile of camp.
I'm being,
Karlos,
I'm being facetious. I'm not sure what facetious means, but I'm doing it. And over the years, I kind of learned a flow for it. The first tours didn't have itineraries, and they didn't have little handy guides to give you an idea of what was to come. And a lot of the time we would find the sites as we went. Like, we would uncover the sites together. It was more of a discovery, like a group discovery, which made those tours different. But those tours were also didn't require any kind of entry fee, didn't require any reservations because we didn't have a plan. We just left. We're like, all right, we're gonna ride this 250-mile loop and it looks like this. The first couple of river to sea loops there was a boat taxi we could rent. So we would ride to the boat taxi, rent the boat taxi, ride across. If we had to rent any sites or anything, everybody would chip in like right there. We'd be busting out the wallets and splitting up the cost. Like one time I rented 5 cabins at a KOA type place, and I did it all on the fly. But over time I learned to kind of develop the process. I learned the rhythm of how people travel. I learned about group dynamics. I learned how to observe when someone was having a struggle. I learned how to observe when someone was chomping at the bit to get going fast. So I learned, there's people who like to ride really fast. And Boneyard. And that's where we went, and that was a great camp. Yes. That's where we camped last year, where Brett Hack was like, oh, it's a river, we can't cross it. And I was like, watch this. And I was like, cross the river. And it turned into a party. Like, I didn't know so many of you men wore bikini underwear. Like, you guys were in your bikini underwear going across the river. That didn't happen. Brett was like, there has to be another way.
Hey, you know the way, I know.
It's okay. It was a good call. I think you did the right thing. Always make me go first. That's a bit of advice. Some people who maybe need a more relaxed pace to finish their tour, they can all finish, but you get these dynamic group of individuals, and I say that on every tour, like, it's hard to predict what 35 of my new best friends are gonna do. But I've learned over the years through experience to kind of find a method that no one taught me. It's just something I kind of acquired by observing and making notes, and always, which always has been a key to the success of what I do, is listening to feedback, listening to people. I always take every suggestion, big or small. When it comes, even with my route creation, a lot of, over the years, the improvements that have been made have been submissions, and it's been me willing to listen, like, oh, okay, no, tell me about it. No, I am interested, tell me more about that. That's how you find the best stuff, and that's also how you learn a lot, just by paying attention and listening to advice. Collaboration is important. So nowadays, not just with the river to sea loop, but with most of the group tours I do, some of the process involves staring at the map and opening my eyes real wide, like if you're searching for Waldo in a hidden picture, and reading the little names of the areas. Sometimes I look for historical markers or springs that maybe no one knows about. And a lot of the tours are focused around these interesting waterways. They're focused around rivers and springs and maybe interesting history of the local area. And it's just an added dynamic that over time I noticed just by kind of staring at the map, paying attention to what was in front of me. And that's a lot of the times how I get the ideas of cool places to see. And sometimes the scouting is important when we go out there ahead of time, because a lot of the time the scouting is where I find stuff too. When I took the group out to do the coastal to Clay Roads route, I didn't know that there was a traditional indigenous mound in the middle of this downtown with a an old traditional house on it. That was something I uncovered by doing the Scout. So not so much with the River to Sea Loop because it's been going on for so long, but with other routes, sometimes the Scout is important because that's when you see the stuff, boots on ground. That's when you find the cool stuff. That's when I find that secret little trail. I'm holding my hand and my phone, kind of like looking at a satellite image, trying to scout out this little trail that goes into a park and seeing what happens. With the River to Sea Loop, I still try to do that. Even this year, I always try to find something new, especially when you have cool places like St. Augustine that have so much to check out. It makes it a little easy for me too. This trip has been tough, but one of the cool parts is that these roads aren't all dirt. There's like a lot of rock, a lot of cap rock back here. So there's a lot of like the bare earth to ride over. It's kind of wild. So in some regards, it's been fun, but it's just been brutal because of the water situation. We had to filter out of a lake, and the alligators literally started like approaching us, like 5 of them in a formation. It was fucking creepy. But no campfire last night, but we survived it, and now we're making our way out, hoping to complete the traverse today. Just to give you an idea of how tough it was yesterday, it took us all day till 10 o'clock at night to do 38 miles. Oh, so over the past 16 years, we've managed to map about a network of about 2,500 miles of routes. And these routes can be combined and connected to get folks from the edge of Alabama or the edge of Georgia to as far south as they want to go. In some cases, east and west. That was the real vision with creating all these routes. And even some of the routes I put together now are just combinations of routes that are already established part of that network. It's kind of like an off-road network that we've managed to curate over the years. But in order to keep it going, it's an ongoing effort. So every year, January 1st, the process starts over again where we spend time doing route verification on every inch of the route. Thankfully, some of the route verification, I'm fortunate enough, happens with the contribution of others who ride segments and just give me reports on it. And we do a pretty good job of keeping up and making sure that everything we're using on the routes is not only passable legally, but hasn't been bought by some development, hasn't been plowed over, hasn't disappeared. We've had parts of the routes with hydrology where, now that part of the route that we used to traverse is now flooded. Since the last major hurricane that tore through the Panhandle, the Ecofina Creek segment of the Florida Panhandle route has been a mess, to say the least. Last 2 times that riders have attempted to get through, they haven't been able to get through. So today I got up at 3:30 in the morning to drive 318 miles to draw a route and see what happens so that hopefully we can make something sustainable for the Panhandle route, not so dependent on the conditions and results of hurricanes. But check this out. Look at that. That's what I'm looking at right now. So already it looks great. And then, we find out 4 years later that now it's dry again. So we kind of can go back and forth with some of those segments. With the process of verification, we verify every inch of every route every year. And it's thankfully a group effort. I do some of it, but it's local people that help out a lot too. And then with the popularity of the rides, it's riders. So when riders are riding on the Florida Divide, if they see something weird, they'll report it to me. Or if folks are doing the Huracan and they see something that out of place, they do it for me. And then I'll usually hop in the car the next day if it's feasible and go check it out. Like just recently, we got a report about tree damage along the Swanee River up to Holton Creek. And we had Graham out there 2 days later putting eyes on it. And sure enough, he was able to verify the damage. So that way we can let people know, hey, for now, we have to go this way. So I got across on the new intended route. I'm not 100% sold on it. So I'm starting the alternate to head back. Bridge is out, it says. But no, it's passable if you're on a bicycle. And I'm definitely going in that water. Access to the areas that we have access to. One of the downsides of doing and organizing off-road routes in Florida, it's that it's not like some places maybe up north or out west where they have, you know, a map, a National Geographic map of the forest, and you can almost go anywhere in that forest where bikes are allowed and come up with a great route. It's not laid out like that in Florida. It's like you have to, like, for lack of a better term, explore and uncover it and link it together. Some of the stuff that we add to routes isn't on any of the maps, but it's a legal throughway. They just have never had a chance to maybe produce the actual map for it and publish it. That's one of the downsides. The upsides is that because of the efforts like the Florida Wildlife Corridor, the Forever Florida Association, they've managed to help maintain a natural corridor so that animals can migrate from north to south or south to north, where they can roam their lands and eat and feed and have a more natural life. Those same corridors, because they're managed by landowners, wildlife management areas, state forests, national forests, can be connected. And that protection allows us to help create this network. So us using the land helps to maintain it as well. It's a very symbiotic relationship, whether it's through the recreational use on bicycles or people hiking. Even the hunting aspect is important because the hunters drive those roads. Sometimes it'll be the hunters who clear the road because it might take the park officials a minute to find that down tree. And sometimes it's the bikers that clear trees. There's a lot of symbiotic relationship out there. So there's challenges, but there's also something to be really thankful for, that we still have all that green space, that we still have so much good dirt that we can ride. But knowledge is important, because you go down the wrong road and you end up in a sand pit or a swamp. So it's good to have someone who's kind of scouted that stuff out and has some good ideas on how to get through. My love for exploring the world under human power came from skateboarding. As a kid, I didn't have a bicycle, so I used my skateboard to get everywhere. And most summers, I would spend upwards of 300 miles skating all over West Volusia. Where other places where maybe kids who had parents who could drop them off, I had to skate to get there. And that kind of appreciation of seeing the world under your own power is what helped me transition later as an adult into cycling. I wanted to have a sport that I could do well into my old age and not look weird. Although, truth be told, I still skate now, so it kind of worked and it didn't. But I got into cycling essentially, number one, because I thought it was something I could do until I got older. Number two, it was something where I could see like 4 times the terrain I could see if I was hiking, because I could move quicker. And then the final reason was I was fat and I wanted to lose weight. And it turns out I wasn't overweight because I ate too much. I just had a hormone imbalance I needed to take care of, weirdly as it sounds. Once I took care of that, the weight came off and I went back to my normal self. But there was some periods there in my late 20s, early 30s where I weighed like 265 pounds. So I lost 100 pounds riding a bike and getting, things adjusted correctly. That's a big success story. I've had the opportunity to participate in an event called Elevate Daytona, where I spoke about that journey of how cycling not only helped me get in shape, but that cycling taught me some philosophies that I kind of always take into I adapted it into kind of like my personal philosophy as a human being. I always tell people, especially when I'm trying to help them learn how to ride single track better, I always tell them pedal, pedal, pedal. Keep things in motion, keep that forward momentum. That's really important, not just in cycling, but momentum is your friend, as they say. I like to tell to people to look where you want to go, right? Because that's a big deal. That you have to have a focus, a destination, even in your mind. They say goal writing, goal setting is important, and it definitely, when you're mountain biking on a skinny single track trail and there's a drop off to your left and a drop off to your right, the only way you can stay on course is by looking where you want to go. And those are just some examples of things I learned from biking that really transferred into a good life philosophy. And it all kind of came from wanting to lose weight, wanting to have a sport I could do into an old age, a lower impact sport than, jumping stairs on a skateboard. That kind of all led to me racing mountain bikes and then doing 12-hour races and then doing those 100-milers like the Cahuta 100 and those 100-milers I used to put on. And when I heard about the Great Divide mountain bike route, and what John Stamstad had to do to finish the route, like he had to carry his own stuff and be self-sufficient. He was eating block cheese and sucking down cans of like liquid cheddar. It was wild, the stories I read about this guy. Oh my God, my interest was piqued. And that's what led for me to start creating routes. First it was just to train, but then, people encouraged me to invite people to try my routes. And the first route I invited people to try was the Naked Indian route. My second route that I didn't invite people to ride, I called the Death Loop because my friend complained so much about the sand, but that was the second route I invited people to ride, the Death Loop. It was more a joke about how bad sand can be that people think they're gonna die. And I kind of laugh about it, and it's tongue in cheek, and we make a lot of jokes. But it was all because of the sand. Little things like that. It's funny they say you understand your life better in hindsight than you do when you're living it. And when I look back, I can see the series of events that led me to this point today. And it's funny, it's interesting, it's good to reflect.
Veterans Day!
Because I've had the opportunity to be part of this cycling community for the past 15, 16 years, I've had a chance to watch it evolve. We went from folks not even believing you could do a 100-mile ride on dirt without sag support to folks coming from all over to participate in these rides and these events. But what I started noticing is that we had a lot of people who were very capable of completing the dirt road segments, but really struggled on the single track segments. So a lot of what we've done with some of the more recent routes, and which is a whole lot easier than trying to find secret trails, was we've incorporated a lot of good old-fashioned dirt road riding, and they still take you to beautiful places and you still see really cool things, but they're easier to create because you don't have to connect secret single track to secret single track, which was the first method that I used for a very long time. Even when I created the Florida Divide from 12 years ago had a whole lot more single track than the Florida Divide does now. And that's not a bad thing. I think it's important to, for lack of a better term, give the people what they want. If people love riding dirt roads, well, good news, we've got some really awesome dirt roads to ride. I won't get away. The routes that originally have single track are still rich in single track. And like the Huracan is super rich in single track, and this year it's gonna have like 30 more miles of single track, which we're calling it a special edition, so we'll see how that goes. That's either gonna be really fantastic or there's just gonna be a massive amount of suffering on the trail. After people drop into the spaghetti bowl and spend hours twisting back and forth. We've added more single track in Croom and more single track in Santos. Because now there's a light route, which is a dirt road focused route. So why not really differentiate the two? Like, you like single track, stick to the original. You like dirt roads more, stay light. You still got to do a little single track even on the light route in terms of the Huracan, but not as much. Consequently, the River to Sea Loop kind of went in the same direction. We used to start the River to Sea Loop in Chuck Lennon. So before we even left Chuck Lennon, we would do like 6 miles of single track, and sometimes some people would be so smoked by the end of those 6 miles that they wouldn't even want to leave the parking lot. They're like, I think I'm done. We've had a couple people who tacoed their front wheel right in the first 6 miles, or got flats, or everything fell off their bike, and it was like, okay, maybe we shouldn't do 6 miles of hard single track before we start a 250-mile trip. Maybe that's a bad idea. But you live and you learn. It's true. It's absolutely true. It was like, maybe we shouldn't do this anymore. Maybe we should find a different way to start the the 250 mile ride. And then over the years, the start has evolved. So a couple years we started at Chuck Glennon. Then we used to start, when I lived in Dilion, we'd start right from Dilion, but then the groups became too big. It looked like a used car lot at the house. Like I should just put price tags on them and see if we can sell them before the weekend's over. And then one time we got to start at the YMCA camp in Dilion Springs. Dilion Springs is huge. That was really cool because when people were done with the River to Sea Loop, they went out and played on the blob. So they were just out there jumping on the blob, launching each other up into the air. It was I love that camp. I was so sad when the person who was in charge of the camp, who I was friends with, took a different opportunity up north. I was so sad. I was like, oh, that was such a good start. Now we have the opportunity to start at a farm in Seville, which kind of makes the route a little shorter than the original versions. The version that we finally settled into was about 200 miles. The current version that we do, and the version that I typically sell to people now is like 180 miles, because again, I've made it more dirt road focused and took out not all the single track, but most of the single track, just to keep it so that it can be doable for almost anyone. And the current version we do now is closer to 150 because we're starting in Seville, which is about 30 miles away from Dilion. So again, evolution. So when you look at the River to Sea Loop, if you go on the website and you click that button and you pay for the River to Sea Loop route, you will get the 188 mile version that starts in DeLand. It's a good version. Birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear hero. Happy birthday to you.
Thank you.
Very nice, thank you. All right, I'm done.
Thank you, man.
Happy birthday. I knew for
thank
like
you.
2 days. I didn't want to say anything.
Oh my God, it's been killing us.
Where is all this going? The facts are, SingleTrack Samurai is not going to be around forever. It's one day I will pass on. And will I have someone to pass this on to? I don't know. But what I want is, even when I am no longer part of this universe, I want the routes that I've created, the guides I've written, this network that I've helped to compose to continue. So the goal is to establish an organization called Florida Bikepacking, whose job will be to maintain the routes, put on the tours, organize the group starts, kind of take over the work that I kind of establish. And part of our focus, especially with the tours, will be ecotourism, bringing people from up north or out west, especially now during this time of the year when it's perfect time to go bikepacking in Florida. That's the perfect time from someone who's tired of being cold up in Minnesota or sick of being snowed in Colorado to come to Florida and ride some great dirt roads, some great single track, do some great routes. Aside from all the cool bikepacking that we've now helped develop in the area, there's tons of great just off-road day rides to do. So really that ecotourism aspect is a part of my big focus, especially with Florida Bikepacking, just because someone has to keep it going. I would hate to see all this go to waste once I'm no longer around. So that's the goal ultimately. And my intention is, as long as I'm around, I'm still going to be a part of it, regardless if it's helping to manage Florida Bikepacking as an organization or still putting on group starts at SingleTrack Samurai eventually. There's going to be an evolution of this whole process. So group tours led by the Samurai, you should get on now while you can, because it's not always going to be led by me. Eventually, it's going to be some person that I trust to maintain the vision to do it for me, right? Or to just do it for the organization. Because in my ideal universe, the point of that organization would be to not only maintain these routes, steward the routes, but help keep that information available for years to come, so that people 20 years from now can still travel those natural corridors and link all that nature together and, take it the slow route versus the fast route. Anybody can figure out how to, do a paved bicycle tour in Florida, just pop it in, look up Adventure Cycling, they have a route. Look up the East Coast Greenway, they have a route. But anybody who's maybe interested in a more off-road experience to get that backcountry vibe without being worried about running out of food or water, because, then Florida is a great place. In Florida, if you are out of food or water, go 10 or 20 miles in any direction, you're going to come across something. You know, if you're willing to go off route, you'll have resupply real quick.
Thank you so much for showing support and love for SingleTrack Samurai. He really appreciates it. May the course be with you and happy trails. We are starting very soon. Go! May the course be with you!